Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Prepper Talk Radio with Scott, Shane, and Paris. And this is National Preparedness Month. We talked about this last time, and I want to remind you all again, every day should be Personal Preparedness Day. Living self-reliant, living responsibly for yourself and your family so that you can be ready for whatever comes. Because not every disaster is the end of the world. In fact, most of them aren't. Could be you lost your keys. Could be the water at the city went bad. Like, just think about it. Be prepared. We're excited because today we're going to talk about something you can do better. We all can. From an expert, someone who I've been following for a while on social media. You may have heard of her. She goes by Peelies and Petals on TikTok, Instagram, and you'll find her pretty much everywhere. And she just launched a book. We have our special guest today, Sarah Thrush. Welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We're excited.
Thanks for being a follower.
You're welcome. I've interacted a few times here and there. And what I like about your content is you just make it so simplified. There's so many people on social media that like gatekeep and they make everything complex. And that's one of the refreshing things. I follow a few canners and some of them go crazy all over the place. And some of them are just simple. And the top two, you're one of. And I'm thrilled when you guys reached out. I was like, yeah, we want you on the show for sure. Especially since you just dropped a book.
I know my publicist was like, have you ever heard of this Prepper Talk Radio? And I was like, I don't know, because all the prepper communities, you guys all have like super similar names. So I was like, let me go look them up. So I looked them up. I was like, oh, he's following me. I'll do it.
Awesome.
Excellent. Well, I don't do the TikTok thing, right? So where is another good place to follow you on? Facebook?
Yeah, Facebook. So Facebook, my Facebook group is Peelies and Petals also. And it is a closed group, and it is primarily canning and homesteading. And we've created a really fantastic community there to help people get started on their journeys. But I also post to my regular business page as well on Facebook, which is Peelies and Petals. So there's two there. Just kind of depending on what level of help you think you want or need, or if you want to join a sense of community to help you get started. I'm also on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. I do a lot of reels. I do a lot of shorts, stuff like that.
Instagram as well. All right.
Same name everywhere you go.
That's nice. We tried to do that, and we've lost a few over the years, and we're mostly at Prepper Talk Radio, but it's crazy with the internet nowadays. Like, if you don't hurry and grab it on a new channel, it could be gone any second.
Yeah, like, and that I personally do not like the name Peelies and Petals, but it was an old Instagram account that I had way before COVID, and it was too late to change it. And everybody that I've ever worked with is like, can you please do a rebranding? And I'm like, no.
Too late. What's too late?
Too late. That sounds like work. No.
Well, I was going to ask, how about Peelies and Petals? If it relates, like as you're peeling the rind off the fruit, or the petals as you're grinding the herbs into the whatever. I didn't know if there was some kind of relationship there.
That's kind of how it started. It was originally, I've always been like a home economist, is what I call myself. And a prepper. And so it was always about helping my family stretch our budget. And do you ever go to the grocery store and you go to pull off like a box of cereal or something, and it's got a little coupon on the front and it says peel here to save 50 cents? Mm-hmm. Those things are called peelies.
Okay.
So I did a lot of like how to save money with couponing and, buying things in bulk, and how to, just stuff like that. And so I was like, oh, peelies and the gardening stuff and the growing your own food, petals. This is super easy. But now it makes absolutely no sense to anybody. So
I was wondering myself. So I guess Scott tells me you are in Michigan. Is that right? In northern Michigan.
Well, it depends on if you call it what a Michigander calls it. So Michiganders will call northern Michigan up by the Mackinac Bridge, which is down from us. We're actually in the upper peninsula of Michigan, which gets its own special title called the UP.
The UP, yep.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Now, you have a homestead up there?
We do. We have a 20-acre homestead up here. Nice. My final goal for my family, because I'm the driving force in all this always, is to have us completely off grid, but still have the grid available. So the last thing for us to go is electric right now. Everything else we're good to go on being off grid. And we can live without electricity for about 2 weeks, the way I have it set up, but it's not going to sustain us through our brutal, long 6-7 month winters.
That was my
And
next
so-
question, is how that's working out for you up there in that, because I also have a burgeoning homestead, I guess you could call it. And I'm in somewhat northern part of Utah, a little bit higher elevation, and I'm struggling with that as well. I do have a greenhouse, I'm getting a high tunnel up and so forth, but wondering how your experience is, for my own selfish, needs.
Yeah,
Question.
sure. If I would have started homesteading up here, I probably just wouldn't have known any different. But because I am not native to here, it has been a huge learning curve. And as you guys know, with learning curves comes big bills, right?
Expensive mistakes. Yeah.
Yeah, expensive mistakes. And so I'm still really learning. We've got 20 acres up here. I'm using about 1 acre of that for animals and farming and growing our food and stuff. That needs to be expanded because our grow season is so short. We have horrible soil up here. It is sand and primarily rock. And so I've had some very expensive learning curves to that. We have an entire downstairs that is about 2,500 square feet that I have plans for doing indoor greenhouse down there to help expand our season. So it's expensive. If I would have started homesteading up here, I would have been much further along, but we've been here 3 years. And so it's just been a learning curve this entire time.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's kind of where my thoughts, my questions are coming from, is, us as preppers, if that, or preparers, you in your book, you say you have a modern, what is it? What's your statement here on your book is just a modern take on canning and such. Here we go. Next generation canning recipes and kitchen wisdom. And I always talk about looking to the past to prepare for the future, right? And so when I think of canning, I think of my grandparents, my great grandparents, and so forth.
Sure.
How do you kind of integrate that in with next generation? And I see that's where we're going as well.
Yeah.
We if we look to the past, we see the future, and so
Sure.
I see things changing necessarily. Is that kind of the way you see it, or where does that come from? Your next generation thought there.
So I grew up in canning. I grew up in homesteading, raising animals. I grew up in that environment. Kind of got away from it when I got married and started having small children. You know how it goes. You got to get to work.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of room for that. So as I made a return to it when my children started school age, I was like, man, my family's been using these same recipes for hundreds of years, like generations and generations of the same canned pickled peaches all the time. And I started looking at it and I was like, I got to have something better than this, right? Like, it is wonderful the way it is. There's a reason our ancestors were able to do this and survive. It's because it works and it works well. But that needs to evolve, and it hasn't evolved. We haven't done, historically, if you look at food preservation, we haven't done a whole lot of new technology in a long time. And I started looking at that and I was like, I need meals in a jar. I need to open a jar of sloppy Joe. So I started looking around at the grocery stores and I'm like, what can I buy that is commercially made and canned? And how can I do that in my house? How can I put the food in the jar and know exactly what's in it? So I started looking at those, and I'm an avid cook. I like to cook a lot of different cuisines. My family is very, very spoiled over here. And I started looking at those recipes and I was like, how do I get them in the jar? How do I make my life easier? Because time's money, right? And I need both. So I started looking at what kind of world cuisines, what is something that I can do that's different that hasn't been done before. And that was super easy to do because I already loved cooking and I already loved canning. So, just taking the two and putting them together.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
That's
I
cool.
want to remind our audience, if you guys like what we're doing here, make sure you give us a like and follow. Make sure that you check out our sponsors because they're how we keep our show running. If you're looking for first aid, there's not a better place than our friends over at AMP3. AMP-3.net for all of your first aid needs. And if you use the code PrepperTalk, you're going to save 15% during National Preparedness Month. Now, that being said, that is vital. We need first aid. but everybody gets hangry. Everybody, right? We all have a rough time and we're like, I just need a good home cooked meal. I just need something tasty. I love that in your book, you go into this, you go into the different things that you make. You actually break down like what you do for a week, what you do for a month, what you can do for a year.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy smokes. Like, I'm a big planner. Our pantry is inventoried. We keep track of everything. We've got cans and cans and cans and a few jars, and I need to get back to jarring and canning, traditional canning. But I love how simplified you did it. And so one of the things that I loved about the book, you talked about the financial benefits, and we talked earlier about Peelies, and that came from Peel and Stick coupons. This is crazy to me because I've always known you can save food or save money by preserving. But in your book, you said you've heard the saying, "Time is money." You can save both with canning. On average, I save $8,000 to $10,000 a year by canning my family's food. Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Now, is that mainly because you're growing, or is that because you were buying and then canning what you purchase?
Yeah, so it is a combination of everything. So a couple things I always tell people. One, the food you throw away is always the most expensive food you'll ever buy.
Mm-hmm.
You might as well just open your wallet and stick it in the garbage can, right? Two, the cheapest food you can buy is local and in season.
Mm-hmm.
Local and in season. So if you consistently, for 30 years of your life, buy peaches in February because you want a peach in February, you are
Mm-hmm.
consistently giving away more money than you need to. Instead of buying a peach in August from somebody who has a peach tree or a farmer's market or even a local co-op grocery store, you will 100% get those peaches for cheaper over the lifetime of your eating habits. And so it's kind of a combination of both of those things. The other thing, three, is I don't hardly mess around with one of anything. You're not going to catch me in the grocery store getting a cucumber unless we're
Mhm.
having like a salad or something. Everything we buy is in bulk, in seasoned, and then preserved, food preserved in some way, however we like that best. And people are using food preservation right now. Your freezer in your house is food preservation. This is no different than that. It's just a different method. And so I buy everything in bulk. When I go to buy cheese, if I buy cheese, I buy, 20 pounds at a time. That gets partitioned up. Some gets freeze dried, some gets stuck in the freezer, some we eat fresh because I can buy that cheaper in bulk than I can if I'm buying that cheese every single week at the grocery store.
Mhm.
Another fun fact is every time you go to the grocery store, have you ever gone in for a gallon of milk and only left with a gallon of milk?
I can actually say yes, but that's
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know where you're going, but
Right.
I'm crazy
just
enough
do-
like that. But yeah,
it just doesn't happen. And these shopping habits that we create for ourselves over the long term really hits us in our wallet. And until you start tracking what you're doing and buying every week, every month, every year, you don't notice that $8,000 to $10,000 till you come to the end of the year and you look at your paycheck stubs and you're like, how did I make that this year? And I don't, what? How
Yeah.
did
You're
I make that
speaking.
in a year and I don't have that? Where is that? Where did that go? A lot of it
You're
goes to our everyday spending.
you're 100% speaking Paris's language. He's a financial planner, so he's
yeah.
like, this
I'm
is
like,
all.
can we talk after this, Sarah? Because I have some cool
we
things.
we totally can for sure.
So one of the
And
things a question I
prepping
have.
it, oh sorry.
No, I was just going to give you a question. So you actually will cook a whole meal. And then do you take a lot of my friends that have freeze dryers? They say the best thing to do is to cook the meal and then freeze dry it and then preserve that after it's been freeze dried.
Yep.
Are you saying that you also can some foods like that as well? Like that you'll actually put them in jars and
Yes.
preserve them that way as well?
Yes. So for everybody watching this right now, if you are just getting into prepping or you have been in it for a really long time, one of the most important things when it comes down to your foods when prepping is diversifying your food. Always diversifying your food. Let me tell you a story. I used to travel around with the drum corps. 3 months of the year, I was with 200 young adults traveling on the road. We would sleep on gym floors. We had a little tiny kitchen on a truck, and that was how we fed 200 adults 4 times a day. And let me tell you what happens when you feed them the same foods or the same type of foods over and over and over again. You get something called food fatigue. And when you get that, morale tanks. And the other thing that happens is if you're not used to eating freeze dried foods for every single meal, you are instantly going to be sick. It's either too much salt, not enough salt, too much fat, not enough fat. Your internal system is going to either keep you in the bathroom or not let you go to the bathroom. So all of these things, when we're thinking about preparation and food, we need to think about diversifying. So some of my stuff is freeze dried. The same chili that you're going to find in a freeze dried Mylar bag is the same one you're going to find in a jar. You're also going to find in my pantry the individual ingredients to make that chili. And then you're also going to find all of the beans and the rice and all of those things that can go into making those soups and chilies in their individual uncooked forms. Why? Because if one of my systems fails, I need the other one to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
2 is 1, 1 is none. We know the whole thing. So food is no different. And you should by diversifying how you are storing and preparing your food as well.
Now, Sarah, that sounds pretty difficult. It sounds pretty complicated.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
If it were, I wouldn't do it. Okay. I'm going to tell you a little secret. I'm like a chaos queen and I'm also lazy. I don't like to do anything that costs me any more time, money, or resources.
Yeah.
So when I'm doing these things, again, I'm doing them in bulk. I'm saying, okay, this Saturday, while I'm watching whatever garbage TV I'm watching, I'm going to sit and can 10 pounds of green beans. At the same time, I'm starting a freeze dried run of my green beans at the same time that I'm dehydrating some green beans. And I do the green beans all in 1 or 2 days as I'm like watching TV. I don't make it a huge production. I just make it small and manageable.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's so smart.
You know, one of my questions to you is going to be, okay, how many mason jars do I really need? And as I was scanning through your book, you have about 200. Now, is that for a family of 4, 6? What do you gauge that on?
I gauge that on, so if you were only going to eat jarred foods, and this includes everything except like beverages and spices, you would need around 2,000 jars of food per person per year. That's how much it takes to feed your family. And that would be only if you were doing that, right? So 200 jars is a good start to get you started and have them in rotation. Now, what I mean by that is you may have 50 to 75 jars up on the shelf, another 25 with your spices or your freeze-dried foods, and then you have the backup jars. Now, the backup jars are so you can be canning things as they're coming into season, or like say you're getting hams in April when they're at their lowest market price. You're buying a bunch of hams in April. If you have jarred up all of your food and have all those jars on the shelf, what are you going to use for your ham when April comes around?
So 200 is your backup, kind of your backup jars.
It's your backup jars. It's your rotation. Everything should be in a rotation, right? So I'm always rotating everything, and I always make sure that we have 3 ginormous freezers. And so I'm always making sure that I have an extra 1,000 jars in my closet at all times, just to make sure if any one of those freezers go out, I'm going to be up for,
be busy. Yeah.
I'll be busy, but I'm not going to lose my food.
Sounds like I need to stock up on a lot more jars. You know, and as I kind of mentioned, I'm starting the homestead, and I'm starting to grow in the greenhouse. The high tunnel will be up next spring. And so this is, really a new thing for me. I have done a limited amount of canning, nothing to obviously what level you're doing that. And so where should I start? I mean, what is the simplest way to start if I'm actually growing? Obviously, we've talked a little bit about get your stuff from the store, get it in season, and start canning and making your meals that way. As a homesteader and only having maybe 100 jars on hand, where would I start? What's a good place for me to start?
So the easiest place to start is with water bath canning. That's going to be the least of your financial investment. You can start with any large stock pot, just as long as it's deep enough to submerge the jars in water, you're good. So you're going to want to start with your water bath canning recipes. And then the other thing you're going to want to start with is whatever your family is already eating. I always tell people you buy these canning books and you go through them and you're like, oh, that looks like a cool recipe and that's a cool recipe. But what you really want to be concentrating on in the beginning is what do we go through the most? If that's corn for your family, that's what you need to be canning up first. If it's carrots, do that. If it's tomatoes, do that. If your family goes through a lot of ketchup, guess what? You need to find yourself a ketchup recipe. Start with the things that you're already eating and then only do that thing. A lot of people in the beginning, you know how this is with prepping, with homesteading, people look at it and they're like, I need to do all the things right now.
Right.
I need to have 200 jars of food up on the shelf right now. No, you're not. And you're not going to. That's an unrealistic goal for you. So you want to start small with the foods that you're already eating. That's the easiest way to start and the most economical.
And just transition over to maybe from store-bought meals to your homemade meals.
Yep, that's exactly what we do. And
Awesome.
that doesn't mean that I don't buy stuff in the stores either, right? We've got big
Right.
number 10 cans of corn. I have freeze-dried corn. I have my corn. I have frozen corn. I have corn on the cob. But also make sure that whatever you're doing, if you have decided that you're no longer going to support a grocery chain for that food, make sure that you have a backup plan for that. So like say corn is the thing that you're like, you know what? We want to grow all of our own corn and support ourselves with corn. Then you need to have a backup plan for that. If you have a crop that doesn't do well and you don't get any corn that year, what's your backup plan? For us, I have a friend who's a corn farmer. They live 15 minutes away. So that's our plan. And that's actually where we get our corn from every year. So always have a backup plan for when you stop going to the grocery store for something.
That really speaks to the need for community. You've got to be building up relationships with everyone around you.
You have to.
We talk about, there's kind of a self-reliance is kind of a falsely identified phrase. It's group reliance, right?
Yep.
Creating a network of self-reliant minded people is the key. And I like that Shane started off with the questions, okay, I'm a beginning homesteader, where should I start? And you brought it back to, what do you eat the most of? Yeah, exactly. And in your book, you also talk about the factors of get this small batch of things first. You break it down to week, month, year. But like my kids, they won't eat most vegetables. I don't know why. My wife won't eat it either. I don't know why. And so like I have trouble storing a lot of the normal stuff, but I like pastas for days, right? Beans, I can get them to eat that. When it comes to simple recipes, you've got recipes from your family, 1800s back in your book even. Like, are there like a stockpile of like 5 recipes that you do the most or that are easy that anyone can do? Or do you mostly keep everything separate in their individual ingredient?
I do a combination of both, obviously.
Okay.
So like, you know, corn, green beans, potatoes, all of those things. If you're just putting a vegetable in a water in a pressure canner, that is the same exact thing over and over and over again. You don't need a recipe for that. You just need to know what times to run that canner for. That's it. And it's kind of the same thing with meat. If I'm putting venison in a jar, chicken in a jar, pork in a jar, that never changes. That is going to be the same thing all of the time. So, you know, like we're going tomorrow to pick up, we got a couple hogs and a lamb at the butcher's that we need to go pick up. So when I bring that home, I'm going to parcel some of that out. It's going to go in the freezer and some's just going to go in the cans by itself. And you know what? All those jars will go in the same canner at the same time, because nothing changes in that. But there will be some of that will go for a soup or a stew so that's the wonderful thing about canning is you can tailor it to your family's needs. If your family doesn't like vegetables, don't do vegetables. You should be eating what you can and canning what you eat.
Yeah, that's great.
That's really cool. So if you create, for example, a shepherd's pie or even a hamburger helper type food, you can throw that in a bottle, in a glass jar, and you can put it in the water bath, whatever, and you can suck out whatever you got to do to make it so it preserves. Do you have to put anything else in it to keep it from having, like, I know that you can only preserve something as long as the weakest ingredient in the thing. So for like freeze drying, a lot of times that's why they say cook it first, because the fats and the oils will make it go bad sooner. So is there anything like that with canning that do we need to be aware of, or kind of?
So here in America, there's two major types of canning. In other countries, there's other things, right? They all have their own way of doing stuff. Here we've got water bath canning and pressure canning, and the food dictates the process. So your high acid foods like your fruits, your jams, your jellies, your tomatoes, your pickled vegetables, those all go in a water bath canner, while your low acid foods like your vegetables and water, your garlic, your onions, your soups, your beans, your meats, they go in a pressure canner. So the food kind of dictates which process is needed. Now in pickling, there is a certain percentage of acidity or pickling brine that needs to be added to those jars. for low acid foods. So say you're pickling corn, you need a 5% acid to help raise the acidity of that food to make it safe for water bath canning. But if you don't want a water bath can, guess what? You can stick it in the pressure canner and you can make pressure can pickled corn, or you could just put corn in water and put it in a canner. I think one of the common misconceptions, and it just comes from a lack of knowledge, right, is that people think either everything is pickled or everything is super salty. And that's just not the case. You choose what you want to pickle. And I don't ever add salt to any of my jars. It's just a flavor enhancer, unless I want to. If I want to flavor enhance that beef stew, I might add a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, but that's on me. That's up to me. So salt in canning is just for seasoning.
And I assume this is all in your book, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And one of the things I tried, this book took me 2.5 years to get out. And one of the things that I wanted to make sure I got done really well is that it walks you through whether you're a beginner or an expert. So it's going to walk you through the basics, 3 chapters of basics and planning and how to do that, 4th chapter of what to do when things don't go quite right, and then 125 recipes, and then my favorite chapter, chapter 7. So hopefully, whether you pick up that book and you're just totally new to this whole thing, or you've been doing this forever, there's something in this book for everybody.
Now, I have added the spiral bound to my Amazon shopping cart. Is that the best place to get it? Is that the best place to get it? Okay.
Yeah, you can get it anywhere. I mean, honestly, it doesn't affect me at all.
Okay.
The book is published by Harvard Common Press, and Quarto is my imprint. And a funny thing about your book is when you get published, you don't own the book anymore. Nothing. So the same spiral book you're trying to get, I had to buy myself. Like, I have to buy my own books.
Okay.
So it really doesn't matter to me where anything is purchased from.
Okay.
Get it what's best for you. Some places run specials or, sales. Totally. Go do that. Go get it however the cheapest you can get it.
All right. Excellent.
Now, Sarah, what's your motivation for this? This is so cool. Like there's a lot of people that are like, oh, I'm going to prepare for the zombie apocalypse. There's other people that are preparing for job loss and just making sure they have that stability.
Yeah.
And so what is your motivation? Are you, I mean, you have thousands of jars of food in your basement. You have
I can't imagine.
You've got a great.
What's my motivation for canning?
Yeah, to live the lifestyle that you're living and continuing to pursue this self-sufficiency, self-reliance kind of situation. What is your motivation?
I think at the core of it, I am absolutely a rebellion, and I always have been, and I want to do everything myself. I'm just very self-reliant like that. And I think really at the core of it, it is that I want to be able to take care of my family myself, feed my family myself, know where everything I stick my hands on or put on my table is mine. Do I do that perfectly? Absolutely not. Like, I buy honey buns. The kids want frozen pizzas every once in a while. It's all about balance. But for me, it was just a very big, I grew up where I had to rely on myself. I grew up in a very poverty-stricken area where it was very much the school of hard knocks. For 20 years, I worked in surgery at a level 1 trauma center where I saw the most just horrible things humans could ever do to each other walk through the door. And it gave me just a real passion for A, helping people, and B, just knowing how to take care of myself and how to survive. And so it's just always been in my blood, and it's always just been kind of who I am at my core.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Have you? Now Scott says that you have quite the following on across your social medias. Did you expect to have that kind of popularity with what you're doing?
No, this whole thing happened by accident. I did not. Listen, I was working at the hospital up until about 6 years ago, and I came home with an Excel. You're gonna love this. I came home with an Excel spreadsheet to my husband. I said, "Listen, I've been working in surgery for 20 years. I want to retire. This is how we're going to do it. This is how I'm going to save us money. This is how we're going to get the homestead going. This is what we're going to do." And he looked at that Excel spreadsheet and he was like, "The sheet's not necessary, but if this is what you want, let's do it." And so I retired that week. I was like, "Peace out. I'm done." And Unbeknownst to me, that was December of 2019, March of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go.
So
Perfect time
I
to
like,
leave. Yeah.
yeah, I like everybody downloaded the TikTok's, app for entertainment purposes only. I had absolutely no idea anything about posting a video or anything like that. And I just very casually mentioned in a friend's live, I was like, well, I've got to go. I've got some apple juice that I need to can up. And he was like, what do you mean can up? And I said, I have apple juice I need to put in jars on my shelf. And he's like, can you show us how to do that? I turned the camera on and I had 15,000 live viewers and 65,000 people pop in and out of that. It was
Wow.
completely
What?
overwhelming for me, not knowing what I was doing even. And a year later, I had 1 million subscribers, 1 million followers. And I to this day don't really know how it happened other than I had a skill. I had knowledge. I had tribal knowledge that people were looking for at the time they were looking for it. And it fit right into my, I want to save the world. I want to help the world. And I want to make sure nobody ever goes hungry.
And
So it just,
obviously others, that's what others wanted. That's what they need, right? That's what we need to hear. It's what we need to be doing. And I think that's one of the reasons why.
yeah.
Obviously so.
And I think it built an online community space where we didn't really have one currently. And I spent, my husband can tell you, I spent so many hours in the comment section answering questions, making sure I was replying in videos, showing people what to do. It was a time of need, and I saw an area that I could help, and I was like, hey, I'll do this. I don't care if it pays me. I don't care. Like, none of that was ever my driving force. And now 3 years later, 4 years later, I've seen a lot of these big things come to fruition, and it's like, wow, I put in all those long hours and stuff, and I have a book published.
There's
Like,
awesome.
none of this was planned, but it's,
Well, and that's not all you're doing. You've got the book. You're also
yeah.
working on a docu-series.
Yes, Destination
Tell us about that.
Preservation, Destination Preservation TV. So I had this idea of, I do things in my home one way. You do things in your home a different way. And we all come from these different cultures and backgrounds and religions, and we all have different access to food and resources. And why are we not highlighting Americans? Why are we not saying, hey, this is what they're doing in New York and this is what they're doing in Utah? And look at this little farm in Pennsylvania. And sharing other people's stories of where they source their food, how that's connected to their heritage, their culture, and their religions, because a lot of our food traditions come from our religions. And how are they getting that food? How are they preserving it? Let's highlight other people's stories, and we can all continue to learn from each other, gather these skills together in an online or TV community. And I just thought it would just be a great idea. And some of the companies that I'm working with were like, hey, we like that idea too. What can we do? So I'm at the stage right now. We have filmed the trailer. It's amazing. You can go to destinationpreservationtv.com. You can check out the trailer. And we're at the stage right now where we are gaining investors. And some people want to be investors. They want to own shares in the company, in the LLC. You can go on there and you can buy shares. Or some people just want to donate because they think it's a great cause. And so they just go hit the donate button.
So how do they find all these things to help get involved?
Yeah, Destination Preservation TV. That's it. .com. And that will show you the trailer. It will talk about the show. It will talk about the 5 of us that are built the LLC and where we all come from, what our backgrounds are. And then it also talks about everybody that's involved with making the show. So your editors, your photographers, your everybody that has already been hired to like do all of these things and has agreed that they want to be a part of this project. Our goal is Discovery Plus. We'd like to be on the Magnolia Network because we feel this kind of fits in easily with that that type of channel. But we're open to anything at this point. We're going to start filming, and I mean we've already started filming, but we're going to start filming the pilot.
Well, I was going to say I got to watch the trailer, and I was just like,
"Oh, did you?
Whoa, this is awesome!" I'm like,
"Yeah." These guys that I'm working with, again, the universe just lined up. I did not go. We were eating tacos one night around a table and we were like, yeah, let's do this. I mean, it just lined up like that. And I'm very just fortunate that the universe, God, keeps handing me exactly who needs to be in my life at the exact moment that I need it. So I can continue to help other people because that is my driving force.
Oh, that's
That's
amazing.
That
wonderful.
is
That's
awesome.
Yeah. Well, I had one other question before we let you go. I don't know if you guys do, but out here in Utah, we live in earthquake country, right? And of
Mhm.
course, I see glass jars, as
Yeah.
kind of fragile, especially compared to, say, number 10 cans, Mylar bags, freeze dried, and so forth. What's your advice on that? Obviously, I don't think Michigan has much concern in the way of earthquakes
No.
or seismic movement or such. What are your thoughts on that?
So they make caddies now that you can put the jars in the caddy. It's got
Okay.
a lid and a top, and it's basically for transportation, but it also works very good for that. But the number one thing is you want to make sure, obviously, that your shelves are anchored to the studs in your walls. And then in the front of the shelves, you can put a 2x4 or a board across the front of the shelf
Mhm.
and secure that to the shelf post
So they
to
don't
give
fall
it
off.
that lip in the front. And then I've also seen people say, I ain't doing all that, ratchet straps. You
Mhm.
get yourself a 1,000-pound ratchet strap and you just run it from
Across the
one.
front.
Yep, across the front of your jars. And I've actually had people come back and say, you know what, we did have an earthquake here and my jars were just fine. I lost like 2 or 3 that fell down and they didn't even break. The rest were fine with the ratchet straps. So that's definitely something that you want to think about. Again, diversifying your food. If all
Mhm.
you have is jarred foods and you get hit with an earthquake, right?
You're done.
Exactly.
You might be, yeah.
Exactly. Always diversify how you are storing your foods.
Awesome.
Well, in closing, one of the things that I really liked in your book, it kind of triggered a light bulb. You talked about the simplicity of being able to just take a jar and reheat it, right?
Yeah.
Or heat it up. You're not having to spend, as a prepper, you're not having to spend all this time taking all your ingredients fresh and cooking them, prepping them, or taking freeze dried and reconstituting them, waiting a long time. And yeah, all those other things are great. It's nice to have it all diversified. Yes, I 100% agree. But the idea hit, and I'm like, it is so much easier with canning to just, hey, power's out. All we got to do is warm this up real quick. I don't have to
Yeah.
use much fuel. I don't have to deal with a whole lot of stuff. And it just simplifies and gives you the same ability to have normalcy. And I
Yes.
think that was the thing that I just aligned with so well as I was reading your book. I was just like, you know what? I've really enjoyed your content over the last couple of years that I've been on TikTok. And I'm just like, wow, it is a lot easier than we think.
Mhm.
It's a lot more flexible in our life to be able to do this. And, you know, really there's no excuse. So guys, if you're listening, please follow Sarah, get her book. It is a super clean read. And what I mean by that is there's no pomp and circumstance in it. It's it's just the basics and then the next step, then the next step. And I love how easy it is to follow and read and understand and digest. And I think a lot of people don't start because they're afraid of how hard something might be.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not. The way
100%.
you show, like I've been in your lives before, and the way you show us how to do canning and the way you do things, you just make it doable for anybody. And thank you for doing that.
Thank you. I think if it was hard, our ancestors wouldn't have done it. I mean, is it a labor of love? Yeah, but I mean, it's the same steps over and over again. I equate it to like when you first learn how to drive a car. You're intimidated by the car. You're not sure what to do, and everything just seems to have you on edge. Canning can be very much that, and I do recognize that happens with people that are just starting out. And so I try to approach it in a way where it's like, here's step 1 and step 2, and if that's all you get done today, that's all you get done today. That's fine. Because it's the same steps over and over again. And then it just becomes muscle memory. And then you're running that canner and not even paying attention to it. It's so easy.
That's the best
That's really
part.
cool. So
Excellent.
I have a question for you, Sarah. If
Yeah.
somebody
I got all
is
the time in the world, you guys.
All right.
well, my question is, there's people listening to our show right now that are maybe in an apartment, or they
Yeah.
don't have 2,000 square feet, or they don't have this extra storage room. one of the great things, I moved from California to Utah, and one of the selling parts of my house was that the person who had built the house had these fantastic storage rooms with shelves already there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my food storage dreams are coming true, you know. But not everybody has that. Not everybody lives in a place. Do you kind of go into that a little bit in the book, what people can do to maybe after they've canned it, how to store it in maybe areas where they don't have as much room, or
I
maybe
don't
what are your thoughts
necessarily
on that?
go into like specifics of that, but I do a lot on my channels because people are like, what am I supposed to do with this? And I tell them the same thing I did with it when I was living in, you know, a 400 square foot apartment. You find space. So that could be a linen closet. It could be underneath your bed. You would be surprised how much space you can make if you just get Amazon risers for your bed that are like 12 inches or whatever, and you just stick those on there, and now you've got all that storage space under your bed. And then I also remind people, you don't have to do it as a lifestyle of the only way that you're going to eat, right? For you, the goal may be to have a week's worth of food on hand or a harvest season's worth of food on hand. And that may be on a much smaller scale for you. And that's perfectly fine. But you will find the space. I've seen people just get Rubbermaid totes, put them in those and stack those totes, you know, up in their closet. You would be surprised how much food you can stuff into little tiny areas like under the bed or in Rubbermaid totes and closets.
As a former apartment prepper, I can 100% attest to everything you just said.
Yeah.
I didn't have the nicety of an Amazon riser for my bed.
Did you have 2x4s or cement blocks?
I actually built a platform bed. The highest I ever had it was almost 4 feet.
Yeah.
And I had 6 months supply of food, all my bug out stuff, all my gear, everything fit just fine under a full size bed. Like, you can fit a ton. That was a little crazy, 4 feet up, but it made for some fun rides during earthquakes. But I love how simple the approach is. Eat what you normally eat and can some.
Yep.
Do what you need to do specifically for you. So guys listening in, if you've not been as fortunate as I have to follow Sarah for the last couple of years, go follow her at Peelies and Petals on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Also go check out destinationpreservationtv.com and get involved, because I've watched the trailer and it's so well done, and it's gonna
take off. So if you want to be a part of the company, I believe November 15th, maybe we're closing it. Yeah, this is it. Last shot for that one.
And then tell everybody, I saw on your announcement you're going to be at an event in VA pretty soon in October.
Yeah, October. What does that say? Did you write it down? 10/11?
Yeah, the Homesteaders of America.
Homesteaders of America, I'll be at. I will be with All American at that one. And so typically for that, what I do is book signings, and then I also hang out in the All American area answering any questions about the canning questions. And then sometimes people just come out to meet me. So if you're in the Front Royal area, I hope I said that right. Front Royal,
yep.
Front
Royal, Virginia, the 10th and 11th of October. Sarah, thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate your time. I know that you've got a ton of things that you're working on, and as always, you are appreciated. Everyone that's been listening, thank you for being part of the Prepper Talk Radio family. Any final thoughts, Sarah, as we let you go? Any final thoughts or words of wisdom you want to pass on to the audience before we sign off for the night?
Do what's manageable, always. If you're starting prepping, canning, food preservation, growing a garden, owning a chicken, whatever you're going to do, make sure that it's something that speaks to you, that you find joy in, and make it manageable. You don't have to go all out just starting out on something. Do what's manageable, do what you find enjoyable, and live somewhere where the four-wheeler and snowmobile trails are not right outside your front door.
I was wondering what that was. Thank you, Sarah. It's been great.
Thank you,
Sarah,
guys.
so good to meet you.
You.
And we're gonna, just as a reminder, when I edit the video, I'll put all your links in the description so that people can have those. And so thank you again for coming on the show. We really appreciate your wisdom, and
it's been great.
I love the connection.
If you guys want me back for like Prepper Talk stuff, I'm totally down.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Food preservation's the gateway to prepping anyways. So
it's funny because we jokingly say we're the gateway drug to prepping, because it's just so much fun, and we try to make it fun, and our audience is fantastic. We've got a great group that comes into our lives every week, and there's so many amazing listeners that give us good feedback as well. So we learn from everybody, and it's just a big community thing, So guys that are listening, make sure you go check out the book, Preserving with a Purpose. You can get it on Amazon and a whole bunch of other places. Get yourself in a place where you feel confident and comfortable to just keep doing these things and learning and growing. That's what prepping is all about. It's more about learning and doing it yourself. And what's nice is if you learn from someone who's done it and already made the expensive mistakes, that's going to save you a lot of money.
Yep.
Thank you again, Sarah. And thank you guys for listening to Prepper Talk Radio for the ready-minded and the podcast for the prepared. Have a great night.
See you next week.
Bye.
Take care.